attention? Do I have your 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 attention?
Is you taking notes?
3, 2, work.
Hello?
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 Hello? Hey, Zillow? Zillow, is anybody out there?
Zillow, can you hear us?
Zillow, can you hear us?
Hello?
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 Oh. Oh, hey.
Oh, hi. Oh, this is so unexpected.
Yes, hi.
Oh, wow.
Hi, Tora.
Hey,
How are you
Franny.
doing, girl?
Oh, you know, living the dream, keeping
Yeah.
the dream alive.
So we see the chat, and also, this mic works, and also there's video. So we want to spend a few seconds kind of seeing who is with us. Where are you watching? Jump in.
Oh my God.
Chat. Video yourself. Come on in.
Oh my God. Hey,
Hi, Mel.
Hey, Mel. How's it going?
I see Scott. I see Cleo.
Cleo.
Amy Lee.
What
Hey, everyone.
up?
Yeah,
Hey.
show yourselves. Show yourselves.
Show yourselves immediately. Just kidding.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, Minnesota. Oh, good to see everybody's faces. This is, okay, I'm going to scroll over.
Dallas.
I'm going to scroll over. I see Rachel. I see Jasmine. Let's see
Denver.
Justin G.
What up?
Okay. Let me scroll over.
Seattle. Hey.
Well,
Wow.
what kind of would we be if we didn't actually take some time to acknowledge folks who are with us?
Right.
Right?
Beautiful people that
yeah.
are with us.
Yeah.
Hello.
So-
Soyo.
Okay, so
Yes, sunglasses. Yes. I love it.
So, in the perfect world, we would have the opportunity to sit and break bread and get to know each other and do intros and all of that good stuff. And so we want to acknowledge that that's not our reality. However, we welcome all of you for our time called No Me Digas, Zaddy
No Me
Issues,
Digas,
El
Zaddy
Pinche Chisme.
Chismosas. Look at all of you chismosas and
Yes.
chismosas. Look, there's 55.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that nobody wants to admit that they're a gossip, but let's be real.
We're all gossips.
gossips.
So I do want to be intentional because both Tor and I are Latinx background people, and this conversation specifically, right, is centered around Latino-ness, anti-Blackness in the Latinx culture, as well as in the LGBTQ community. And so we want to see how many of our Latinx family are out there. Show yourself.
Show yourselves.
Yes. Hi, Crystal. Who else? Let's see.
Greg. Hey.
Yes, hello, Greg.
What up?
Awesome. Yes.
Yes. Hola,
Yes.
Rainbow. Yes.
So it's great to see everybody.
So I guess you want to know who the hell we are. So, so my name is Tor. I go. My pronouns are they, them. Thing is, my name used to be Hector. My given name was Hector, but I never really liked that name. So when I realized I was non-binary, I decided to change it. But I wanted to keep some of my name because it's my heritage. It's also my father's name, but that's another story. Never mind. Anyway, so I decided to take the heck out of my name, and now my name is Tor. And I am a performance artist. I'm a writer, model, activist, fabulous human being. Vibrant. I also run a Latinx council for mixed blood theater. So I'm pretty much arts is my life. So that's me.
And hi, everyone. My name is Fernando Rodriguez Jr.
That's enough.
I also use the name Fernie. So you can see Fernando Rodriguez Jr. You can call me Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Fernie, Mr. Rodriguez, or just straight up fabulous. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American gay kid from the U.S.-Mexico border. We're both from El Paso, Texas. Graduated from UT Austin, hook 'em. So my heart is down there in Texas, and we're here in the Twin Cities. And, we want to acknowledge a big thing. It's Pride Month.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be really celebratory, and yet the world feels like it is burning around us. For those of you who have not been under a rock, We're right in the Twin Cities, in the heart of the George Floyd aftermath. And so over the last several weeks, Tor and I have been under a tremendous amount of kind of reflection, right?
Right.
Given that our hearts are in Texas, and yet we're here in the Twin Cities experiencing what the world kind of has their eye on.
Right.
And I'm sure that you are also impacted. And so we're grappling with big topics this afternoon. And so we're gonna hold the tension of being celebratory and also funny, while also trying to open up some really, really deep conversation, okay? So we actually did do some pre-planning, and we have a bunch of stuff on the agenda, but whether or not we stick to it is dependent on Tor, because they are definitely the ruler here. So let's jump in.
You know what, that is not true, because for me, I was like, no agenda, let's just do it. But this one has an agenda, so let's follow the agenda.
Yes.
No, but I do want to start with the fact that it is Pride.
Yes.
And I want to acknowledge that Pride started as a riot. Like, Pride was a riot, and it was started by Black and brown trans women, Black and brown queer people. And I'm just gonna like jump right to it. Throughout the years, it's been pretty whitewashed.
Completely whitewashed.
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, Pride here, and I love the Twin Cities, but it's so commercial. Going to the park is just insane. Like, you know, when we legalized marriage here, Pride was just like pretty much like a wedding like convention. It was pretty insane. Like, people were trying to bank on us getting married, you know. Not that I'm bitter or anything, but
yeah. But I do think
it's
it's really an important thing to consider, right? When we're here, and as you even signed up for this event or saw the month of Pride, right? Do we ever think about where did that even come from, right? And oftentimes the stories that are completely erased from these histories are those of Black and brown individuals. And in this case, Black and brown trans women who actually led, right? What we now get to enjoy, right? Our sponsored vodka tonics and absolute shots in this corporate big event called Pride, right? So let's start there.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's talk about like, why is it so white? And the big issue is colorism.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that starts from childhood. Like, so for me, I love mom and dad, but I mean, my parents they're pretty racist. There was a lot of African American jokes that went around in my household, and it just, and it was always really uncomfortable for me, but I don't know, they never really understood, because it was just natural for all of them, because, their parents made these jokes. So it's nothing. Como si nada.
Yeah. And the important part about our context is that we grew up in a predominantly Mexican community in El Paso, Texas.
Yeah, I didn't know I was Mexican until I moved to Minnesota. I just want to point that out.
Right. So, and the reason that that's important is because even before, for me, for example, I actually went out and lived in communities where there was more representation beyond my Mexicanness, right? The messages around anti-Blackness were embedded even in a culture that was largely Mexican. And so while Tor's example is a little bit more overt, one of the ways that I remember as I reflect on my childhood, these anti-Black sentiments showed up for me in my upbringing, was how we described the Mexicanness, right, of various Latinx folks in our community. And I remember very distinctly, for those of you who are familiar with the border, El Paso is directly across, right, Juarez, Mexico, where my father is from and where I have half of my roots, right? Yeah. And so the other piece of that is the indigeneity around my father's appearance, darker skin, right? I remember there being these passive aggressive kind of slights, right? Like even like el güero or la güera, right? Like being appreciated for being lighter complected than my father. And so as I think about now bringing it back, right, into how those early messages came into be, now I'm gay.
Really?
And I have, shocker. But when I think about what gayness means within the context of the LGBTQIA community, right, now being in the Twin Cities and having to deal with white gay culture, and notice I'm using the word gay a lot because that's really intentional. It very much, for me, still feels like a very white whitewashed experience being in a predominantly white space. So for me, the question that I have for us is when we think about Pride Month, right, who are we including, right, as part of our idea or celebrating Pride?
Right. Well, when you mention like the word gay, that is really important because I also want to say that I don't identify as gay. I identify as queer. And I mean, well, having to like come out to my mom as gay and then later on as queer was kind of an interesting situation. Also coming out as non-binary was also another thing. I just feel like I just keep coming out like constantly. I feel like in 10 years, I'm going to come out again as like something else and I just don't even know. But at the same time though, it's pretty fabulous. So I'm not going to lie, because it's like, I feel like I'm evolving as a human and I'm like turning into this amazing creature that I was always meant to be, but yet I didn't really realize that until my late 30s because of the way I was brought up, because of the oppression that I experienced. And it has a lot to do with our culture. It has a lot to do with the way the world works, you know? Like, I think it's crazy that being non-binary is like, it's kind of like a trend in a way, which is weird. And I don't know.
So, you know, you were talking a little bit about being non-binary and how I think gay pride is just that, right? Gay pride. So what I was reflecting on is when we say, you know, the topic on here is we wanted to talk about Grindr. Grindr, no fads, you know, no fads, no femmes, you know, white only. This is some bullshit, right? And so I think that, you know, further dissecting this like gay pride thing, right? At the center of that, I think now it's, well, let's talk about that. Let's go into Grindr. No fads, no femmes.
No fads, no femmes. Well, I mean, like, I'm both, so. Not only am I rejected for appearance, but I am rejected for just being who I am. Because there's no way I'm gonna butch it up for anyone. Like, F that. Like, that is not. And like, can I just talk about that? How there is a lot of feminine gay men that do butch it up for, you know, so that way they can feel loved and they can feel some affection. Because what I heard all the time, as an adult in my youth, you know, in my early 20s was, you need to butch it up, otherwise you're going to stay single, because most gay men are attracted to men, and if you know, they're gay because they're attracted to men, not women, you know. And to me, I mean, that stuck with me for a very long time, and I think that was one of the reasons why it took me so long to discover who I, you know, truly was, because I was trying to fit in the best way I could. But the problem was I could never be butch. There was just no way. I'm way too fabulous.
Okay, so I think we have an opportunity here to bring it to the work setting, right? So you talk about being butch and you talk about all of that. So some context, right? I'm an academic. So I wasn't kidding when I said Dr. Rodriguez, thank you. And I worked my ass off for that, right? And so now I'm in these really white academic spaces where I actually do have to I wouldn't say butch it up, I have to perform a certain type of professionalism that is palatable for the predominantly white leadership, so that I'm not constantly navigating the line of being overly feminine while also not being too aggressive, right? While also navigating the fact that, guess what? One salary does not a whole legacy of poverty, right, create. And so it's an intersection of my identity as one, as a Mexican, two, as a Mexican American who is coming from a working class background, three, someone who identifies as gay, and, you know, for sure, I have a lot of femininity in the way that I perform masculinity. But I wonder when we think about pride and when we think the way that you all have to show up at work, right, for those of you who do identify, I'm sure that a lot of this might be resonating for you depending on the professional spaces that you find yourself in. While also, right, for me, I think what I'm trying to name is like this whole idea of authenticity, right? And how authentic can you be in these types of spaces where you are going to be judged by a predominantly white, cis, heteronormative, professional lens? That was a long sentence.
That was a really long sentence.
Sometimes I get on a high horse,
Yeah,
y'all.
basically he was like, we code switch at work.
Yeah.
Like, that is exactly what he said.
So yes, that. Yes.
But I mean, it's a problem. And I actually had this conversation with my friend Ricky. Hi, Ricky. He's making like 6 figures. I forgot what he does, but he's like making it. But he said that he doesn't think he would have made it this far if he could be his true self, because he said, you know, at work I have to dress a certain way and I have to act a certain way, and like and he's like, I don't think I could.
Don't ever do that again, by the way.
What? Well, you don't like it?
No, I don't like it at all.
All right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's true though. I mean, it's like male femininity is like shunned upon. But I mean, it's shunned upon because I feel like it's been that way for centuries. Okay. Like you can't get ahead as a femme queen.
Okay. So I want to take it, because I think this whole femininity and one within the context of race and performing and all of that can lead us right into dating.
Okay, you go first.
Well, no, all it says right here is dating.
We're
going to talk about dating.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah. Well, this is what I wanted to talk about, because we always hear about no fats, no femmes, right? Yes. Like, you know, you're racist, you're fat shaming. Yeah, yes, very true. However, I've had the experience I've dated white men that only date Black and brown people.
Oh, you mean being someone's spicy?
Yeah.
Spice of the night?
Yeah, well, not even that. Like, I even had one guy that was like, oh, my ex used to make enchiladas for me. Do you want to teach me? Yeah. Like, he wanted me to become like his Mexican housewife. And honestly, if he made more money, I would have been like, yeah. But
okay, so
but no, really, it's wrong.
Wait, so hang on. So we have to put this into context, right? Because first off, you said something that was really interesting. That was, you know, you're not in your early 20s or etc. So let's tie it all together, right? Dating, pandemic, right? Can you imagine that? Your Grindr is blowing up, y'all. I know it. If you remember those early days of that pandemic when Grindr was giving you that free update, my gosh, for like a period of time. So let's talk about dating, aging, right? But then also what does that even look like? The last one is wellness. How do you balance, right? For me, I'm a single, fabulous 30-something, 37 years old, proud of it. Never want to go back to my early 20s. Absolutely single. Still figuring out, like, how the hell do you do dating within the context of the pandemic? And then for me, and I would say us, very predominantly white communities that often view us as, I wasn't kidding, someone's spice of the night, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not often that people will say, you're so spicy. Or hola papi, don't ever say that. Unless you actually are a hot Latin guy and want to say that, then I think it's okay.
I mean, honestly, dating now is just weird because I feel like my expectations have just gotten higher because I have to. Like, I feel like
okay.
I don't do dating apps anymore because I feel like nowadays it would be like, hi, and I would be like, hi, how do you feel about defunding the police? You know, like right away.
Ooh,
otherwise, yes, no, okay, no, bye.
It's complicated.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You know? Because can you date somebody that is not for it? You know, or like, can you date somebody that has different politics than you?
Can you
date
someone who is not for it? I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I mean, okay, so here's the deal.
Explain yourself.
Well, here's the truth. Look, There are lots of thresholds that you have to pass at this point, right? Okay. Lots of thresholds. Like, what if you have it all and then, like, are super, I don't know. No, actually, it's a deal breaker. Yeah, I think I just made that realization there. I really do think it's a deal breaker. And I think my hesitation there was that just made the dating reality far more difficult. Right? It's no more about, are you a top or a bottom? It's about, did you vote for Trump, baby? Let me see your voting record, okay? So, yes, I said it. Sorry. I said it. Okay, so we have, okay, look, it's only 2:26. That's awesome. We have so much time.
We have so
okay.
much time.
So, no fats, no femmes, early childhood. We talked about dating, wellness.
Yeah, how are you taking care of yourself?
So, I posed it to you, how are you? Right?
Yeah.
The truth, I think today I'm okay. You know, I'm excited to be in front of you all. But the truth is that the last time I was in the office was actually this morning, but for a short period of time, but fully in my office, surrounded by students, with my team, was maybe March 13th. Since then, it has been the working from home. This is one of the very few times that I've seen Tor.
Yeah.
And
I do have to say, though, that we actually had like a long conversation about, okay, will I allow you inside my home without wearing a mask? Because I mean, there's also that about dating. Like, am I gonna allow you anywhere near me without a mask?
Yeah.
Because that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
oh my God, I actually read an article the other day about like how you should be having sex while wearing a mask.
Oh my God. So, okay, back to, wait. So back to,
but I mean, like, really, but what's the point though? Like, I mean, you know, anyway.
So sorry,
going back, sorry.
So again, virtual world, completely isolated in those first several weeks, right? I, open, vulnerable, right? Because y'all invited me. I recently reconnected with my therapist, was like, y'all, I think I'm off the wall. I'm just like, I think I need to get back to center for the first time in years, because I've been really thinking about, okay, do I want to be medicated, right? Is this important? And it took the pandemic to finally take the leap. So I just had, Tor knows this, just connected with my therapist and doctor. Those pills are on their way, right? And I think for me, one of the things that is really important, especially as we look at the various, the shit that I think specifically people of color, LGBTQIA people, all of us, right, are really having to navigate, because it is true when they say that the pandemic is not impacting all of us equally, right? No. I am blessed to have a beautiful loft, in St. Paul, and I've been there, and I think about if this had happened to me, 6 years ago, the very, very awful situation that I would be in, right, in terms of where I was financially, where I was living. And so I think well-being, in this month of celebration, and also pain, right, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, and now, feeling it around the world. There's just so much, right, in terms of what it means to be well, and how I take care of myself, and how I think communities who have been targeted can take care of themselves. So what do you think about like care? What does it look like to care for you, for yourself?
I mean, for me, I've been working out a bunch because like I have to be strong if I have to like fight for myself, because I mean, like, shit is scary out there, y'all. I like right now we're at the house that I live in, and we're like a mile away from where George Floyd was murdered. So I mean, like, we are like right into it. Helicopters are like, all over every night. So, I mean, like, shit is scary. So I work out. I do, but also it keeps my mind just like away from everything. Like, I'm just like focusing on like, but it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to find things that I love. Like, I started reading again. Try to avoid watching television because it's too much.
Well, it depends on what you're watching. Because that Ozark series is freaking awesome. So for me, so here's what I will say, y'all. So those first 3 weeks, I don't know about you all transitioning to the virtual world, but I felt like my ass had to be at that desk in front of that computer from 8:30 a.m. all the way until the hell it was done, right? And over the last 4 or 5 weeks, right, one of the ways that I take care of myself is, oh no, ma'am. If I'm not scheduled for a meeting, if I'm not, having to be, meeting with somebody, I move away from the desk, I take a nap, I cook, right? So I intentionally, right, create some time where I am not constantly feeling like I have to be on. And I encourage my team to do that, right? I role model to my team, and I say, hey, y'all, especially in the aftermath of George Floyd, I said, we are Black and brown people also, right? And we are impacted in very direct ways. And so I'm going to role model the way for wellness, right? Take care of yourselves, cancel your days if you can. And so I hope that wherever your workspace is, that there is this encouragement of, even as professional colleagues, right? I think it's important that we are able to check in and say, okay, how are we doing, right? What does everybody need in this moment? And for me, especially after the first week of the riots and the protests. And by the way, when I say riots, I'm completely okay with riots, especially if they're deserved. So especially in the aftermath of, like, it cannot be business as usual, right? We cannot just continue as though nothing has happened in the world around.
Yeah.
So, other thoughts?
I also have to say that we have to be kind to ourselves more, and we have to be less judgmental. Yes, I'm saying this.
And well, but it's so hard to do that in the gay community and LGBT. Like,
well, yeah,
what do you mean?
Like for example, like I have to be less judgmental that I've been spending like a shit.
All of yourself.
Well, yeah, I've been spending like a shit ton of money on clothes.
Amazon.
Like, I bought like a silver leather crown, and like honestly, y'all, it's awesome. Yes, please. It's right there. Forney's gonna get this crown. But I mean, the thing is, I bring that up because I have to like be okay with the fact that I'm spending like money on like beautiful things like this. You know, it was only $30 and like free shipping. I mean, like, however, do I need it? No. But we are going through a pandemic and it looks cute and I'm hot. And yes, I am a princess. So, you know.
But doesn't that also get to the issue of class? Maybe that's another
do we talk about class? Yes, let's talk about class. Now that I have the crown on, yes.
Yeah. Who gets to spend money on freaking Amazon or to, you know, be, you know, cocooned up and on a 6th floor freaking cute little loft, right?
Well, I mean,
when I said the comment of like, you know, had this happened just not too long ago, right, my situation would have been dramatically different. So, class, yeah, LGBTness, this corporatized pride stuff. How do we do that?
Well, I mean, like, I'm truly blessed that I didn't get laid off from my job. Yeah, just because I work in customer service and somebody has to answer to the people, so there I am. But a lot of people that I know were laid off, so I mean, it is truly a blessing. But also, do we even talk about muy guilty?
Yes.
Like feeling guilty about like our
yes,
parents and. Because, you know, like, we grew up poor, you know, so the fact that I'm able to buy this crown, you know, and that my parents are not. So, you know, it does make me feel guilty a little bit. But, I mean, at the same time, though, like, I've worked really hard to get where I am. And it's just one of those things that I deal with on the regular. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us on this call deal with that to some extent. There's always, like, this guilt. Because it's part of our culture. We were born guilty. Actually, we were born guilty. Like, that's according to Jesus or whoever. Yeah. You know.
So thank you for bringing guilt up. That is so big. Here's one of the things that I was thinking about, and maybe this resonates with some folks, especially, you know, if you identify as someone who is first generation, maybe the first to, you know, go to college and have this, you know, really nice cushy job where you're able to work from home. What I was thinking about is in these moments, first off, like, I'm not able to be at home.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter at this point, like regardless of what salary you make, regardless of where you're at, like, you cannot be at home.
Yeah.
Right? with your community, right? The other piece of my guilt is, you know, like, do I want to travel home, right? As we think about like how communities of color especially have been impacted by this pandemic, right? Do I risk like going home and like doing, so those are just some thoughts.
Do you want to go home back to El Paso? I mean,
yes.
I love El Paso. I know you do, right?
Yes, I do.
I don't know, Christmas maybe, but it's gotten that crazy. Because also, does anybody else like not ever want to leave their house anymore? I feel like I'm getting there. I used to be like a social butterfly. I was out all the time, all these events, like all these parties. And now I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, no, you can come to me. Hence the reason why we're doing this here. You know, like, he came to me.
Okay. So we've talked a lot, right? And I think we covered a lot of ground. One of the things that is important for us to open up now is, first off, what are you doing? What are you thinking, right? We've talked a lot about and shared, I think, from places of vulnerability, right? And so questions, thoughts, reactions, challenge, right? Maybe you say, oh, hey, Fernie, you said this, I disagree, or can you say more about that? Right? So I know that Brandon is going to help us with the chat box, but I'm going to talk a little bit about, so kind of give you some more context about how we have approached kind of this space, especially when it comes to being from Latinx backgrounds, identifying for me as a cis gay man, right? A lot of my academic background and research is around how first generation Latinx Mexican American men think about masculinity, the messages that inform how we even perform and all of that. And so as we led up to this, one of the other things that I was thinking about in terms of gayness and queerness, and to your point about femininity, is like, what is the role of masculinity and the way that we have to navigate this LGBT month?
What is the role of
masculinity?
We have to just get rid of masculinity and femininity and just combine it all into one. Okay. What does that look like? I see a lot of gray, but I feel like we can make that different if we stick together. I know. I mean, didn't we have this conversation about like, what does equality look like? And we were kind of like, looks pretty boring. But I mean, so what are we fighting for really, you know?
Okay, so who's out there? Who wants to say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'll start. Hi, I'm John. I'm out in the New York office.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
What's up? Thank you both for having this. You guys are very, very entertaining. You kept me engaged, so I appreciate the energy. I appreciate everything you all said. I want to really go deep and narrow with kind of the current events that's happening right now. And, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement is, you know, for me, top of mind, 100%. So I think this is a great opportunity that we have a lot of people here in the Pride Network to kind of sit and discuss not only racism within our own community, but how can us as allies be better to our Black brothers and our Black sisters. I think this is a great time where we all can come together and make stuff happen. As this group. I don't know what that looks like, if it's reoccurring talks like this, how we can maybe incorporate, because we have a platform here at Zillow and it's great. I want to maximize that and make sure that we are focusing on for me, the core issue of what's going on right now, which is what we're trying to do, right? Uproot racist system that is currently in place and police brutality. So how can we all who's currently listening right now as allies be better allies?
Keep the conversation going. Because, and I mean, like, let me just say this, because like, I told you early on that, you know, my parents tend to be like a little racist. So having conversations with them nowadays is like, yikes, you know, because my dad, and he has a valid point. Like he said, you know, if it would have been a Mexican, nobody would have gave a shit. And I was like, well, okay. I don't think it would have been as, you know, as big. But the thing is like, you know, right now, yes, the focus is on Black people. Black people are being murdered. So what I told my dad is, the thing is like, yes, it is true that we are also being targeted, but right now the moment is for the Black community. So I feel like we need to stand in solidarity with them, because in return, if we stand in solidarity with them, they will stand in solidarity with us. But I mean, it's just like conversations like that, like small ones, just keep those going. Continue.
Yeah, there's one thing that's really important there that we have to name, and that is this thing that we are pushed to do constantly, to compare people's situation, right? Like the idea that my Mexicanness is somehow, you know, wouldn't cause the same reaction. and I think that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a different context, different history, different location, different stories, right? In this context, right, there is a legacy, right, of over 400 years. And so I think that that's the whole thing with the whole Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, right? Like, we have to resist this push to compare, right? And really aim to have the difficult conversation. And I have to say, we prepped for this quite a bit. And we were very, Brandon, we stopped short of emailing you again because we're like, how far can we go, right? How far can we push this? Because, this is, from my understanding, a very, work-related, corporatized kind of space. And so even as we prepared for our conversation, we really talked about, okay, so the fact that this space even exists, even though because it is an LGBTQ identified kind of space, but the fact that you're having a conversation that engages race, I think speaks to something that has to continue, and it has to be further, right? We're just having a conversation, right? By the way, I'm a trainer as well, just saying. So, going in and really having intentional conversation around how does Zillow as an entity, right, not only support and invigorate this conversation, but also what is the connection with the community and how far are you willing to push this, right? In my space at the university that I'm located in, right, I'm very aware that this is one moment in our history where we need to be able to advocate for, first of all, so that I can have a full team to support our students, so that we can look at the policies, procedures. So yes, I think that this is a moment where people have to get on board, because it is going to dramatically change the way that we move forward. I believe.
Yeah, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and we just have to find a way to be somewhat okay with the comfort, because we have to be uncomfortable, and we have to look at things from the beginning. Like, that's what I've been doing with like all my work. I've been focusing on like, how did this start and where did the problem begin, so that we can go back. But I mean, that's, yeah.
There's one thing that I think I also is important when you said like about you have to be uncomfortable. The other thing, we have to be willing to say the wrong thing. Yeah. Right. And there is something to this, like you say the wrong thing and cancel culture and all of that. And listen, I also am a social justice warrior. I wasn't kidding when I said I'm a trainer. A lot of my education and career experience is in the DEI sector. And in the 20 years that I've done that, I am very aware, right, that we are now in a terrain that you don't speak up and you don't say anything. And for me, I think we lose the opportunity for someone to say some shit that is going to not be good, right? But we have to be able, for me as an educator, I have to be able to hold that moment and say, ooh, okay, right? And recognizing that I'm making a decision to do the emotional labor as a man of color, right? To educate, typically, right, my colleague or student or et cetera who is white, right? But doing it because I'm committed to being that educator, right? But I don't do that shit all the time. Only when I choose. So thank you, John. Sorry, I think we went off on like a big tangent, but your question is the big one, right? And I would say continue this conversation. Others, how can we maintain? Yes, Mel.
Hey, so hot off the press. So John, I know you and I have been talking a lot about this, and I feel like I've accelerated my process very quickly to, I don't know how to talk about this, to like, let's change the GD world right now. So I've been trying to think about how can we make, like, I'm the VP of our Pride Network, and I'm trying to think of real ways that we can have impact. So, I can't share a lot of details yet because we're literally just having these conversations this morning, but like, just expect we're going to start campaigns for census awareness and also voting awareness, and really talking about and providing resources to help people understand how to vote, what to do if X, Y, and Z happens, your polling station closes, where can I go, to understand census and why it's important. It's not just about saying like where you live, but it impacts funding. It impacts how people view and count our community. And our community, along with our Black and people of color are just really underrepresented. So like, how do we make a real impact? We provide information and resources, and we spread the word. And that's where I'm really feeling the fire on this. So I'm excited about that and more to come. And if you're interested in getting involved with this, please feel free to reach out to me, but there'll be more communications about this.
Thank you, Mel. I have one thing that I have to say, and I think so I think it responds to the question that was submitted by Lindsay. How can we maintain momentum? And so here's the thing. I wasn't kidding when I said I have almost 20 years doing DEI, social justice training, engagement throughout. My background is higher education. Here's what I recently have come to understand, and it places the onus on my white colleagues, right, and counterparts, and that is there's a book called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and by the way, we're going to end with some recommendations to continue the work, right, because we prepped. When I think about the spaces that I occupy in my administrator role in higher education, I am often around white men and women, right, who come from upper middle class backgrounds and whose experiences do not reflect the students that I support or my own story, right? And so embedded in that, one of my critiques and one of the limitations that I would offer as great, you come to this 90-minute training, right, and you get all of the lingo that you can then go and use in specific points, but especially when I think about my white colleagues, right, after they leave that space, they're able to go into their very comfortable white lives, right? Where their communities are predominantly white, their doctors, their social networks, their professional spaces, are predominantly white. And for me, one of the things that I have learned through reading and doing my own work is that the work actually happens in what you do after you leave that space and those 60 minutes and those 90 minutes. And the true work goes in, are you going and putting yourself in multicultural spaces? Are you attending, right, various educational workshops outside of this bubble that is our professional space? And so to the question of how do we continue to do our work, right, in addition to the space, in addition to relying on Zillow, there is a huge element of personal responsibility, especially for my white allies, right, who name themselves as such, right, is that this requires actual work, right, where that discomfort is something that you live in versus choosing when you get to be uncomfortable. And that's the difference, I think, from being underrepresented, right, versus someone who is represented throughout. Sorry, I'll get off my pedestal.
Basically what Fernando
Stop. Okay,
I mean, no, but pretty much though is if you want to make change happen, then be radical and educate yourself. Like start reading. I mean, that's for me, like, because I really do want to make change happen. The question is how, and like, how do we keep momentum going? Like for me, I'm just going to start off by educating myself and just learning more. And I feel like just that will keep the momentum going for me, and eventually, hopefully, will help me, keep the momentum going for others.
I actually have one more thing to piggyback off of that. Just out of curiosity, I think that's great, and I feel like everyone needs to do self-work and look themselves in the mirror really hard and ask themselves some really tough questions. At the same time, I feel like now's not the time not to be not racist. We need to be anti-racist, especially for all the allies. So here's the thing. How I want to start holding people accountable, especially here within Zillow, especially leadership, especially management. So when management reaches out to me saying, hey, John, I hear that you're going out to March on Juneteenth. Send me the details. They don't show up. So let's talk about that. How do we hold our leaders and managers accountable? Because I'm not using this platform for clout, right? So this isn't an opportunity for self-gain. So at this point, I mean, you hear in my voice, I'm just upset. I'm frustrated. It's very hard to even concentrate on Pride and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because of everything that's going on. But it's like, I'm already feeling it within my own work. Right? Where it's like, I'm seeing things that don't match up to your actions. So how do we hold those people accountable who are supposed to be leading us?
Ooh. John, I've been in that boat so many times.
Well,
I mean, honestly, I don't really have an answer for you because it is a power struggle. You know, they have more power than you do. I've worked with a lot of organizations that are, you know, they do the bare minimum so that way they can say they tried. You know, like
I have an answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So, and the answer that I have for you is from my own. So I'm going to answer that question because I'm in that very same situation right now. One of the things that for sure crisis exposes is where your real values are, right? My context, I'm like, ooh, who's listening out there, y'all? I don't want to get fired, but you know, my context is an institution, right? I report directly to one of the top administrators. And largely, I have lots of critique for all of the university leadership, I have to say, right? My answer right now in this moment, just please hear me, is I am playing the game so well, right? I am navigating those politics so well, so well. For me, this is a moment. I've spent 20 years understanding the game, the political terrain, right? I know what people say and I know what they actually mean here in Minnesota, you know, Minnesota nice. So for me, I am leaning on what I know about that organization, where and who has the power to create an uproar, right? So for me, my context is students. Students are pissed right now at the university. I am riling them up, right? They're coming for me. I'm saying, okay, meet with me. Here's who you actually need to connect with, right? So doing that whole back game for me, right? Knowing where the power lies and who they're going to listen to, while also being very, very clear, right? Nobody at the institution does not know what Fernie actually thinks. Right. And so I am playing the game as best as I can because I know that they're listening. I know that they're going to listen to students. I know that the university does not want a PR nightmare. So, you know, hey, play ball, right? 18 years, here it comes, right? All that experience, I'm really leveraging on it. And being open, right, to I might have to make a decision about whether or not I'm willing to lose my job, right? For me, that's the kind of level that I'm at, right? Like I have to decide, okay, is this worth losing your job? And I think that it could be, right? Depending on what it is. So I'll stop.
I have nothing to add. That is a very good question. And John, I like you. You're cool.
John, I think also piggybacking off of that, you and I obviously have had many, many conversations, and you I find to be one of the most powerful allies that I appreciate more than anyone that I have in my life right now, family included. And I think, you know, you're right. Like it's asking the questions, asking the uncomfortable questions, but playing the game. I went to school in Appleton, Wisconsin, down the road from where you guys are right now. I went to Lawrence University. Mm-hmm. So I played the game there, and I play the game here, and I play the game in every company I'm at. And fortunately, this company, I don't feel like I have to play the game as much, but no matter what, we always have to play the game. Yeah. And because it is a sprint. It is a marathon, not a sprint. It is a game of chess. You have to be strategic. And then once you get yourself having worked 2, maybe 3 times the effort that your colleagues actually have to put in to get to that place, it's what do you do with it then, right? Make sure you're heard at that point. You having put in 18, 20 years as an activist, gone have your PhD, like you worked your butt off, you know, like, and John, like where we are now, we've worked our butt off and we are being heard now. Right. And I think it's, as long as people are still listening, you have to make the platform accessible so people are still listening and understanding, and show them, demonstrate to them what is happening, right? Like in an era of social media where things are captured on video, like this is the time where we can actually make progress, even leaps and bounds beyond, because we're still in the same place we were many ways, at least people internally, that we were at during Selma, right? So, and I think that's the most important thing to recognize, is like, make it accessible, make other people get upset, get angry, because it's exhausting to always have to be that person. And when I have someone like John out there and angry and infuriated and representative of multiple communities, that is what's so powerful. So like, I think, having these conversations powerful, but again, like what Lindsay was saying in her question, I fear the throttling back of those conversations, and that it will go by the wayside. And I just hope that this has now provided us a platform to open that up and play that game of chess and put ourselves in our respective communities in positions of power so we can affect actual change.
And we have to make sure to keep our heads up high, because we do not drop our crowns.
Gosh. A couple of things, just because I'm noting we'll be done very shortly. I added a Google Doc link to the chat. And this link I take no credit for. A group of bomb-ass Latinx, Latina, and also fabulous women scholars put this resource together as a way to do a scaffolded kind of anti-racist immersion. So I share that with you all for your individual work, or if you want to do this as a collective. And then we also actually did write down some recommended readings that you can listen to today, right? So I mentioned White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, one of the first resources, and those I offer to my white colleagues, right, who are listening.
And then we have a book called Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. So many people were like, this book has changed my life. So far, 3 chapters in, and like, I'm obsessed. It's a really good read.
Mm-hmm. There's also a really great book by, and I hope I'm not completely butchering the name, but Resmaa Menakem, called My Grandmother's Hands. And it's all about like doing some anti-racist individual healing, right? And then also, I just encourage folks who also have recommended readings. Those are just a few that we came up with. Include them in the chat box right now. And what I can do is send the transcript over. If you have resources on your end that may be something you're really reading and want to share with your colleagues, now would be a good time to do that. Okay, so let's see. We have 2 minutes. Y'all got IG?
Oh yeah, No Me Digas podcast. That is my Instagram. Like, just put it, No Me Digas podcast. Yep, yes. So just know, before you look into my Instagram, I used to be a fitness model.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something really bad. That's not your OnlyFans account. Just
however, if you want that, like, let me know.
Shut up. Okay. Brandon, Brandon, you had to end it like that. Brandon, did we cover everything? Oh, Brett, where's Brett? Thank you so much for connecting us. I see your question about, are we losing momentum? Brett used to be a student of mine, and now I consider you a friend. It's not. I don't think we're losing momentum. I actually think what is happening here in the Twin Cities is that I think we're still in a moment of post-traumatic stress, quite honestly. Yeah. I think what I'm feeling is a sense of that calmness is really mourning, right? That's what it feels like here. It's very eerie, very, very eerie. Yeah, at least the way that I experience it. Okay, it's about 3 o'clock. Right? Anything as we go? You usually do your whole, like, one last thing.
Yeah, the one last thing, and I mean, I guess we should do it. So I always end all my podcasts with asking my guest, Fernando, what do you want to say to the world? What do you want to say to the community?
The thing that I want to say is, first, it's a pleasure and an opportunity to really be in front of you, and I don't say that lightly. We, first-gen kids from the border, really, really appreciate your time. But then also, this is a process, right? And one of the things that I've learned in the 20 years that I've been doing this is that the best thing that I can do is open up the conversation and hope that the person at some point reflects and connects to that conversation and then does their own work. I never am at the table trying to change that person. I am always at the table trying to plant seeds and hoping that somebody else will water it down. Great to see y'all. Bye.
Are you not gonna let me say anything?
Yes.
Oh, I just want to say, before we go, This isn't plugged in. This was just a prop. So it's going away. I will say this. Stay beautiful. Stay educated. And as my grandma always said, ask for the money first.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see ya.